2003, Lego was drowning in $800 million of debt and burning more than $160 million in cash. According to Platform 01 Consulting, the world's favorite toy was just a few bad quarters away from collapse, all because it tried to do everything except the one thing it did best: bricks. For decades, Lego looked untouchable. If you were a kid in the 90s, those colorful plastic bricks were everywhere. According to a turnaround case shared on TSI, Lego was synonymous with creativity, imagination, and play. Parents loved it, kids begged for it, and the brand became shorthand for open-ended building and storytelling. The formula was simple: a limited number of compatible bricks, endless ways to combine them, and sets that felt like invitations, not instructions. But as the late 1990s rolled into the early 2000s, Lego's leadership decided simple wasn't enough. Competitors were launching electronic toys, flashy brands, and video games. The fear was clear: if Lego didn't expand, it would be left behind. So they did what a lot of growing companies do when they get scared: they chased everything. According to a business transformation article on TSI, Lego expanded aggressively into video games, merchandise, clothing, watches, TV shows, and all sorts of products that didn't really line up with its core identity. Instead of amplifying what made Lego unique, these ventures started to dilute the brand. On the surface, it looked exciting: theme parks, apparel, media. Lego was becoming an entertainment empire. Inside the company, though, complexity was piling up, costs were rising, and the core brick business was getting less and less attention. The brick that built the empire was slowly being treated like just another SKU. The expansion rush didn't stop at a few side products. According to Platform 01 Consulting's overview of Lego's crisis, one of the main reasons for the company's financial distress was its rapid expansion into what they call many unions and integral ventures, like amusement parks, clothing, and media. These moves dragged Lego into capital-intensive, unfamiliar businesses. At the same time, the product system itself was quietly exploding in complexity. An Instagram case study on Lego's turnaround points out that by the early 2000s, Lego's product line had become a bloated mess with over 12,000 different parts. Many of those parts were rarely used, just sitting in warehouses and eating money. Think about that. 12,000 unique elements. That's not 12,000 sets. That's 12,000 different shapes, colors, and pieces that all had to be designed, produced, stored, and forecasted. Every new theme, every new side venture, wanted its own special parts. That meant more molds, more suppliers, more inventory, more complexity in the factories and the supply chain. Overexpansion wasn't just about brand confusion. It was literally baked into the plastic, and it wasn't paying off. According to TSI's breakdown of Lego's fall, the company was chasing trends, video games, merch, and media that pulled them into markets where they had no real advantage. In the process, they were spreading themselves thin and slowly losing the magic of the open-ended brick. Growth brought complexity. Complexity brought inefficiency. And, as leadership coach Trevor Parker writes on Northco, soon the business felt bloated and distracted. On paper, Lego looked like it was doing more than ever. Under the surface, it was getting weaker. The worst part wasn't just the financial complexity. It was that Lego started to lose touch with the people who actually bought the bricks. According to TSI, in chasing new markets and demographics, Lego alienated its core audience, children and their parents. Sets were becoming bigger, more intricate, and more scripted. Instead of a tub of bricks and a picture on the box that said, "Imagine something," kids were getting over-engineered sets that required lengthy, rigid instructions. When you finished, you had one perfect model, and very little desire to tear it apart and start again. Customers didn't want that. TSI reports that parents and kids wanted creativity and imaginative play, not confusing, overly complex products. At the same time, digital entertainment was exploding. Video games, DVDs, and later online experiences were pulling kids' attention away from anything analog. According to TSI's account, Lego's initial response was to fight that digital wave instead of finding ways to use it. Inside the company, it must have felt like they were doing the right thing: more themes, more features, more ideas. But to the customer, it felt like Lego had stopped listening. The company that had once turned a simple brick into infinite worlds was now packaging that world into pre-built experiences and missing the point of its own success. By the early 2000s, the bill for all that complexity came due. According to Platform 01 Consulting, by 2003, Lego had accumulated significant debt of $800 million. Their equity ratio sat at 54.4%, and they were running a negative cash flow of more than $160 million. In simple terms, they were borrowing heavily, burning cash, and running out of room for error. TSI goes as far as saying Lego faced bankruptcy in the early 2000s, driven by over-diversification away from its core brick business. That over-diversification wasn't just a strategy problem. It was an operations nightmare. Costs were spiraling. The supply chain was tangled. The product portfolio was so wide that, as the Instagram breakdown puts it, many parts sat in warehouses, rarely used, quietly killing margins. Inside the company, tough conversations started. This wasn't about launching the next cool set. It was about survival. If you looked at Lego from the outside in 2003, you still saw a famous brand, beloved toys, and fun advertisements. But according to multiple turnaround analyses, the financial reality was brutal. This icon of childhood was a few steps away from collapse. This is the uncomfortable truth of overexpansion. The market doesn't care how beloved your brand is. If you ignore fundamentals long enough, cash flow, focus, customer value, the numbers will eventually catch you. Lego's turnaround didn't come from some genius new gadget or a surprise viral hit. It came from something much harder: saying no. A document on Lego's turnaround strategy, shared on Scribd, explains that the company brought in a new CEO in 2003 with a clear mandate: stop the bleeding and refocus on Lego's core competency, the brick itself. According to that same turnaround description, the early 2000s strategy was to reverse the over-diversification that nearly bankrupted the company and to rebuild around what Lego knew how to do better than anyone else. TSI's article describes some of the painful steps that followed. The company cut product lines by about 30% overall. Around 1,000 employees were laid off. Operations were streamlined to concentrate resources on the products that actually mattered. The Instagram case study adds more detail. Lego cut its parts catalog in half. That meant aggressively removing rarely used, overly specialized pieces and returning to a simpler, more versatile system of elements. At the same time, Platform 01 Consulting notes that Lego tackled supply chain and operational problems, moving toward leaner, more efficient processes to get costs under control. Northco's leadership analysis points out that Lego adopted leaner manufacturing, optimized its supply chain, and outsourced selectively to improve margins. In other words, they went after the invisible stuff: factories, inventories, SKUs, internal complexity. This wasn't glamorous. It meant fewer products, fewer experiments, and uncomfortable restructuring. But it was the foundation Lego needed to survive. Refocusing on the brick didn't mean going backward. It meant using the brick as the anchor for everything else. The Scribd turnaround document emphasizes that once Lego centered its strategy back on its core brick business, the company's performance shifted dramatically. According to that source, revenues grew about five-fold between 2006 and 2016. Platform 01 Consulting reports that within about a decade of the early 2000s crisis, Lego's sales had risen by approximately 900%. By 2014, Lego's annual sales exceeded $2 billion, and for the first time, it overtook Mattel to become the world's largest toy maker by revenue. That kind of growth didn't come from doing less forever. It came from doing more of the right things. Northco's analysis describes how Lego began forming smarter partnerships, like major franchises such as Harry Potter and Star Wars, that strengthened the brand instead of diluting it. Those collaborations worked with the core Lego identity, licensed stories layered on top of a simple system of bricks. At the same time, according to TSI, Lego stopped fighting digital disruption and started collaborating with it. The company launched blockbuster video games like Lego Star Wars and Lego Harry Potter. Those titles didn't replace the physical sets, they complemented them. Kids played the story on screen and then used real bricks to recreate and remix it in their own way. The Instagram breakdown notes that Lego focused on core sets that encourage creativity, not confusion, and doubled down on play systems that spark storytelling. This was the pivot, from chasing every possible market to asking, does this make the brick more valuable? Does this expand creative play, or just add noise? Once Lego aligned its growth strategy with its strengths, rather than away from them, the numbers followed. Put all of this together, and Lego's story isn't just a feel-good comeback, it's a blueprint. According to Northco, Lego's recovery wasn't luck. It was about discipline, focus, and reconnecting with fundamentals. The questions that turnaround raised for leaders are brutally simple. Where is complexity suffocating your business? Which customers have you stopped listening to? How much inefficiency is hiding in your operations? Does your growth strategy amplify your strengths or pull you away from them? Lego almost died because it tried to become everything. Theme park operator, fashion brand, media company, trend chaser. According to TSI and Platform 01, that overexpansion and overcomplexity led directly to a crisis of debt, cash burn, and customer disconnect. It came back by doing the opposite, cutting back, simplifying, and pouring energy into the very thing it had been neglecting, its core brick system and the creative play it enabled. For a business owner or investor, the lesson is sharp. If your product line, your projects, or your lifestyle feel like Lego's 12,000-part catalog, sprawling, inconsistent, hard to manage, that's not a sign of success. That's a warning. Complexity looks impressive from the outside. But as Lego's $800 million debt pile and negative cash flow showed, it can quietly hollow you out until you're one shock away from collapse. The turnaround only started when Lego asked, what's our equivalent of the brick? And what do we need to cut so we can protect and grow that? Lego's near collapse and comeback show that explosive growth and endless new ventures can be fatal if they pull you away from your core strength. The real power move isn't adding more. It's ruthlessly cutting complexity, refocusing on what you do uniquely well, and only growing in ways that make that core even stronger. Look at your own finances or business like Lego's parts catalog. Where have you added so many projects, subscriptions, or side ventures that the core, your most valuable skill, product, or goal, is getting buried? This week, pick one thing to cut and one core strength to double down on. Then hit subscribe for more money autopsies that turn near disasters into blueprints you can actually use.